All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Al, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Erin, and we want to welcome you to the Getting Started with Microsoft Teams webinar, where we are going to build a Microsoft team from scratch. We are senior learning leaders with Educate, a company that works to challenge educators to rethink learning by designing solutions that inspire inquiry, creativity, and collaboration. So let's take a look at what we are going to be covering today in this webinar. So just so you know, this webinar is a 45-minute webinar followed by 10 minutes of question and answer. We're going to start by creating a team. We're going to use Teams for communication, looking at all the different ways Teams could be used for communication. We're then going to look at assigning and grading work, and then, as I said, the last 10 minutes will be dedicated to question and answer. Our learner outcomes for today are to identify how Microsoft Teams features support remote learning by promoting community, communication, assessment, and access. And then we're going to discuss how to organize an online learning environment using Teams. Just so you know some logistics about the webinar today. As you notice, your mic and video are muted. That way we're not talking over one another. You do have two modes of communicating with us, however. There is a chat feature and a Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Most of you have already used the chat feature, which is great. Please continue to use it throughout the webinar to discuss ideas amongst yourselves. If you have questions during the webinar, while you can post them in the chat, we can't promise that we're going to see them. So we ask that you submit them through the Q&A feature. That way, Erin will have the ability to answer them as we're going through the webinar. Another thing to note, this webinar is being recorded. I mentioned that for two reasons. One, because I want to practice good digital citizenship and let people know anytime they're being recorded. But also because this recording is going to be available to you at the end of this webinar. So in a couple of days, you will receive an email with the recording in it, and it will also be posted on our website at eduscape.com. Just so you know some basic troubleshooting logistics. If you're having trouble viewing the webinar, you can press Control plus F5 on your keyboard to refresh your browser if the viewing is disrupted. Please check that your computer speakers are not muted and the volume is up if you currently cannot hear me. If you can hear me, you're good. We're actually not going to conduct a poll today because this is a pretty small group, which is great. That means any questions you have, we'll probably be able to address, but we'll ask our polling questions in the chat. Video troubleshooting guide is available if you have any other issues by clicking the information button and help. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, there is closed captioning currently. That's, however, only connected to this PowerPoint presentation. So once we hop into Teams, you no longer will have this closed captioning. So if you do want closed captioning, that feature is available on Zoom. Just click it on and you will receive it. Okay, so quick question. Just type in the chat. Let us know how comfortable you currently feel about using Microsoft Teams as an online learning platform. Do you feel generally comfortable? Do you feel okay? Or do you feel nervous? Let us know, or anything else in between. Okay. A couple of people said okay. Some people said nervous. Generally comfortable, but never used Microsoft Teams. All right, great. So it looks like a few people might feel comfortable, but for the most part, people are feeling either okay or even nervous. So we're here to let you know it's totally okay to feel nervous or overwhelmed. In fact, that's probably a pretty healthy response to a practically overnight, complete 180 shift in a career where you were not prepared for it and you were not provided with resources for it. So don't feel like you're alone in that. And we want to let you know that we are here to help. That's why we are conducting this webinar. We're going to challenge you to try to build your own Microsoft team as we go, but also don't feel compelled to. If you're getting nervous or anxious about the idea of switching tabs from this webinar to Teams, don't feel like you have to. As we said earlier, this will be recorded, so watch and take notes now if that's what you prefer, and then you'll be able to pause the video later on if you want to revisit the recording. Okay, so without further ado, let's actually get started in building a Microsoft team. So the very first thing that I'm going to do to access my Teams is I'm just going to open up my desktop app, Microsoft Teams. If you don't have it downloaded, there is another way to access Microsoft Teams. What I would do is I would just open up my web browser and I'd head to office.com. It might prompt you to sign in, or you might already be signed in. And from here, you could just choose Teams and open it up as a web-based Teams. So you wouldn't need to install anything. You could just open it up from your web browser. If you prefer to have the desktop version and you don't yet have it, you could simply click Install Office and you'll be able to install it onto your computer. For the purposes of this webinar, I want to take us through the desktop version, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to double click this to open it up, or I would. Right now I currently have it open. And this is what the interface of Teams looks like. The very first thing that I want to do to start navigating Microsoft Teams, I'm going to look at this left apps bar. This is going to be the first place I go to navigate. Because I want to start a new team, I'm going to click the Teams section of this apps bar right here. All right. Now that's going to bring me to this interface. Here, I'm going to see all of the teams that I've either created or joined. If you have not created or joined any teams, of course, you won't see any teams here. To create a team, I'm just going to click this button, Join or Create Team. And from here, I'm going to press Create Team. Now, there are a few different types of teams that we can create. They all function in very similar ways, but there are some slight nuanced differences. For example, the class team, which is what we're going to be building today, is geared for teachers who have students. So you're going to see things like assignments, grades, a class notebook. Staff team, which is geared more toward administration with teachers, they're not going to have something like assignments and grades because that's not relevant to that kind of team. There are a few other nuanced differences, and Erin shared with you in the chat a link that Microsoft provides that explains the subtle differences among these team types. For the purposes of this webinar, we're going to create a class team because that's what we want to replicate, a teacher with students. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. And then I just give this a name. So perhaps the name of this class is 5th grade science. And then I could just click next. Now it's going to prompt me to manually add students or teachers or teachers. I can do that here, but I want to show you how to add teachers and students after the fact. So I'm going to skip this for now. Okay, so now we're brought right into our team. If I want to go back to see my teams, I just click Teams again on the apps bar right here. And now I'm looking at all the teams I'm part of. And if you notice, this new team that I just created is here now. So if I want to access this, I'm just going to click on it. And it brings me back into the team. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I want to show you how to add students and teachers to this team. So if I want to manually add them, if you notice the name of the team is right here. To the right is this ellipses. I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to click Add Member. So just to show you that again, it's this ellipsis, I click, and then I have add member right here. So when I click that, I can manually enter students and teachers. I'm going to enroll the moderator of this group, Erin, as one of my sample students. Oops. Okay. Maybe I'll add a couple more. Okay, so I have a few students now in this class, and maybe I'll add a teacher as well, because I have perhaps a co-teacher in this class with me. Okay, so now they're enrolled in my class. If I don't want to manually enroll students and teachers, I could also click this ellipsis and get linked to team. If I click get linked to team, it's going to provide me with a link that I could copy, and then I could email it to any students that I want to enroll in this team. And they would click on that link and join the team. So they would be enrolling themselves, so I don't have to enroll them manually. So here we have a couple of ways that we can enroll students in our team. Okay, so teams are comprised of something called channels. Think of a channel as a topic or a conversation. It's a way that we can organize our team. All teams automatically have a general channel built. So that's what we're in right now. That's what we're looking at. If we want to add more channels, I could simply click this ellipsis right here and then choose Add Channel. So let's give that a shot. Perhaps I want a place where students can come together and share things about their day-to-day life living remotely, right? And social distancing. So I could call this Our Community Matters. Okay. And then I would just add this channel. I might even let it automatically appear for all students. If I don't, they still have access to it, but this just makes it appear, so it's a little bit easier for them. I press add. And now I have a second channel. I have general and I have Our Community Matters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct students to this channel to share anything about their lives, to share what their workspace looks like. It's important to remember that in these difficult times, where we've never experienced anything like this before with this pandemic, it might be even more difficult for students and they might feel more isolated than ever. So creating that feeling of community and connection might help mitigate that feeling of isolation they might otherwise have. So when I create this channel, I could write a message to them. Welcome to our digital community. And once I send that, any students who have access to this channel, which is all of them, will see that message. Channels don't have to be accessible to all of our students. As you can see, we have a student who responded, right? Channels don't have to be accessible to all students. We might sometimes want private channels. So I'm going to go ahead and create a private channel now. So I click this ellipsis and I go back to Add Channel. And maybe I call this channel Green Reading Team. So perhaps I have different reading groups in my class. I have a green reading group, a red reading group, and a yellow reading group. And I want to send private messages to the green reading groups so that they're getting specific instructions that might not be relevant to other students, that sort of thing. So I'm going to create this channel for them. And under privacy, I'm going to click this drop down and I'm going to choose private. All right, that's going to prompt me to enroll certain students in this team. I do want to note that if I don't change it to private, if I leave it on standard, that doesn't mean that it's public. It just means that everyone from the team can access it. So it still is private, it's just public to the entire team. Private means it's specific to only the students that I've added specifically to this channel. So let's go ahead and click next. Maybe Erin and Michelle are both members of this reading team. So I'm going to click add. Once that's done, I click done. Now I have 3 channels: General, Green Reading Team, and Our Community Matters. Notice the lock next to Green Reading Team that notifies me that this is indeed a private channel, that not everyone will be able to access it. Okay. So as I said, teams are comprised of channels, and we can organize our channels in whatever way we want. We could organize them by unit, we could organize them by topic, we could organize them by subject, however we want to structure it. So while teams are structured by channels, channels are structured by tabs. So I'm going to go back to this general tab, general channel. This is the default channel that all teams automatically have. All right, so we can add more channels like we did, but we're always going to have this default one, general. The first tab in general is this posts tab, which we explored a little bit already. When we opened up our Community Matters channel, we posted something in the tab, in this tab rather, and we even had a student respond. Posts tab is great for communicating messages to a team or a group of students. It's good for updates and announcements. It's good as a discussion board or discussion thread, as you see here. And when we message students or we post messages here, we also have some other features. Let me just move this quickly. We also have some other features here that can add flair or just enhance the message. One in particular that I want to point out is this attach feature. It looks like a paperclip. When I click that, it's setting up, give it one sec, I can attach files to a post. So I could post something from a different team, I could post something from my OneDrive, or I could even upload something from my computer. So for example, if I posted something like welcome to our digital community, I might want to attach a file that includes our new digital norms and expectations for using this channel or even all of Microsoft Teams. What are my expectations as a teacher for my students? So as you can see, in this tab, Posts, we can update students on any information we have, create announcements, start discussion threads. It's like an open forum for your students. Now, I mentioned in the introduction that Microsoft Teams is a robust platform for communication. So if you want to have team-wide conversations, this is a great place to do it, but you're not relegated to the post section. As you can see, we have some more functionality. Our student just posted an image to this channel, right? Maybe this is a picture she took in our garden, which is exactly the kind of thing we're trying to encourage in our community. Now, as I mentioned, we are not relegated to using only the posts section for communication. If I want to message individual students, or if I want to message a group of students, I could head back to this apps bar and click chat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now, if you notice, I can, in this case, I have communication happening with one student. In this case, I have communication happening with a couple of students. To create a new chat message, I'm just going to click this new chat option right up here. Once I click that, I can add people to a message. Okay, as you can see, we already started having a conversation here. I saw the progress on your assignment. Great work. Thanks. I had a little trouble getting started, but I feel good about what I've done so far. So as you can see, the chat section, it works very similar to an SMS text message. You can privately message students, or you could even send messages to groups. So we've got the chat feature. we also have the posts section of our channels. Another way we might want to communicate is through video conferencing. If I want to schedule a video meet, I'm going to click the calendar and I'm going to click anywhere on this calendar that I want to start or to schedule a meeting. So let's say I want to schedule a meeting for next week, Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. So I'll just click right there, and I have an important assignment coming up for my students. So I'm going to write essay office hours. So this is going to be a time where any students can jump in the call with me and ask me any questions or share any concerns they have about their upcoming major assignment. Feel free to join me here to ask any questions about our upcoming assignment. Now, I need to inform people about this. So if I wanted to meet with specific students, I could add them to required attendees, which informs them that they're required to join. Or I could click optional, and I could invite attendees and let them know you're welcome to join, but I'm not requiring it. Or in this case, because I have basically open office hours, I'm not inviting any one specific student or a couple of students. It should be open to all my students. I'm going to add a channel. To do that, I'm just going to click right here. And then I'm going to select my class. Let's see where it is. I belong to a bunch of classes. This one is 5th grade science. And then I'm going to choose the channel. I don't want to add it to our Community Matters because this is an assignment. It's not about our personal lives at home. So I'm going to add it to general. So now when I send this, it's going to, once, as you can see, it's loading right now. Once the meeting is created, it's going to appear in the posts tab of the general channel because I've assigned it there. So all students will know about the office hours and they'd be able to access it directly through that posts tab just by clicking on it. I also don't have to schedule meetings. I could start an impromptu meeting just by clicking Meet Now. Once I click Meet Now, I just invite whoever I want to join me. This is not the only place that I can access the Meet Now feature. If I'm in the Posts tab, in order to get the Posts tab, I'm going to click on Teams. Because I'm already in this team, I'm going to click the channel that I want to get to, in this case, General. And as you notice now, it has populated here. So students would be able to enter just by clicking here. I could also just start an impromptu meeting down here by clicking Meet down here. All right, so that's one of the features on the Posts tab. I also could start a meeting by clicking Chat. If I'm in the middle of a chat conversation with somebody, right up here, I could click Video Call, which is the same as Meet Now, essentially. I could also start an audio call. I could just share my screen. Before you use video conferencing, we do recommend that you discuss with your district what the policies and procedures are about video conferences with students so that you're able to ensure that you're adhering to your district policies. So as you can see, there are all sorts of ways to communicate with your students. You've got individual chats, you've got a discussion board via the Posts tab, and you have video conferencing. Microsoft Teams isn't only a hub for communication, but it is also a great source for sharing and collaboration. Let's take a look at some of the features we have available to us for that. I'm going to go back to Teams, and I'm in my 5th grade science team still. The next tab after Posts is Files. So I'm going to click on Files. Now, the Files tab essentially acts like a filing cabinet with no lock on it. So when we upload files here, all students have access to and edit access to the documentation here. Students also can upload their own files to this space. So if I wanted to upload a file, I could simply just click upload and I could upload anything from my computer. Or I could create a new file, which I'm going to try right now just by clicking new. Maybe I'll add a Word document as an example. Document. And once it creates this document, give it a second to load. This, oops, is a sample document. Okay. We'll close that. So now this document appears in our Files tab. Like I said before, just to rehash for a second, I can upload files, I can edit files as a teacher, students can upload files, students can edit files. So there's no restrictions in this section. So what we want to do is we want to consider what kinds of conversations that we want to have with students before we have them working in this space. So when I say that, I mean discussions about digital citizenship and appropriate conduct online, what kind of files we do think are appropriate to share here and what isn't, etc. The students do have agency here, which is great. We want our students to have that agency, but we also have to talk to them about responsible use. There are a few other places that we can collaborate and share with and among students. I'm going to show you another one now. This next tab is called Class Notebook. So when I click on that, it's going to bring us to our class notebook. Because this team was just created, we still have to set up the notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and click that now. If I have resources in a notebook from another team, I could upload that directly here from existing notebook content. But in this case, I just want to start a blank notebook. So that's what I'm going to click. So this is telling me what will be in my notebook, which we'll go over in a second. Now, in the student section of the notebook, the student notebook, they will have prefabricated tabs. I can choose if I want to edit these at all. Because this is a science class and I have my students doing a lot of work in, I typically would have students be doing a lot of work in a lab. I'm going to have a lab work section. So I'm just going to attach that as well. So now students have 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs instead of the default 4. And I'm going to go ahead and create this. So as this notebook is being created, I'll tell you a little bit about it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with OneNote, this class notebook is essentially OneNote. OneNote is the digital equivalent to the 3-ring binder that students have when they're in a classroom, right? So if we think of Microsoft Word as a formal series of documents that we staple together and submit, OneNote is the place where students take notes and they throw in an audio file with notes in it, and then they draw a line to connect two items, and then they move a piece of text from here to there. It's much more open-ended. It's much more supposed to be a note-taking space. So that's what OneNote is. Classroom Notebook is set up as a OneNote. Class Notebook has a few different sections that all function differently. So one section is called the collaboration space. The collaboration space works similar to what we just saw with the Files tab. Collaboration space, anything we add here, students can access and edit. Okay, so that's important to know. So this is going to be a great place for students to work if they are doing group work, or we're assigning them to work together, or brainstorm as a class or something along those lines, because they're all collaborating in the collaboration space. Next, we have content library. Content library is a place that we as teachers can add resources for students to access, but students can't edit. So these are, I want my students to read and review a sample lab report. I don't want them editing this lab report. I'm probably going to throw this in the content library because the content library allows them to view but not change the contents of this library. The last section is the individual student notebooks. Okay, so these are, there's one, class notebook is going to create a student notebook for each individual student. So as a teacher, I can see all of my student notebooks, but students can only see their own notebooks. So when Erin, my student, logs in, she's not going to see Erin, the other Erin or Michelle's notebooks. She's only going to see her own. As you see, if you remember, we had these 4 tabs, homework, class, sections rather. We had homework, class notes, quizzes, and handouts, and then we added lab work. Well, this is where we see it. This is the section that we've added because that's what makes sense for our 5th grade science class. So if I maybe assign Erin to do homework, she might do it in her homework section. I'd be able to see the work she does and leave feedback. Only Erin and I can see the work that she completes.
Al, if you want to click on my homework page, you can see.
So thanks, Erin. So this is an example. Erin just created this in real time. She gave us a little drawing of a smiley face. So as you can see, we're not relegated to just text in our OneNote. We could add all sorts of things. A draw feature is just one of the many features of it. Okay, so that's the basic breakdown of Class Notebook. So we can share files with students through the Files tab. We can also share files with students and have students collaborate through the Class Notebook. Now we're going to talk about formally assigning work to students through the Assignments tab. Because again, this class was just created, we have to get started, and then it brings us right into the assignments. So here, obviously, there are no assignments created yet. I'm going to create one now. I get 3 options. Assignment, which is what we're going to actually do. This is the catch-all. This is the generic item that we could do anything with. Quiz is like assignment, but it has a Microsoft form attached to it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Microsoft Forms, forms are the digital equivalent to pen and paper tests. So you could create a multiple choice assessment, you could create short answer questions, however you want to set it up, but that's the purpose of Microsoft Forms in this context. We could also create from existing. What that means is if I've assigned an assignment in the past, or if I have an assignment in a different team, I could pull that assignment and post it here to this team. I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, I'm going to create a basic assignment, which is what you'll probably be doing for the most part. So I'm going to give it a title. So let's say in this case, invasive species expository essay. There is an instruction space. I am able to add instructions here. It's a good best practice to always provide students with instructions and expectations in the same location. So in a digital classroom like Microsoft Teams, this would be a good space to do that. So I could say something like, be sure to include your name and the date on the assignment, right? Probably have more sophisticated expectations than that, but for the purpose of this demonstration, those are the instructions I gave my students. Okay, I'm going to get back to add resources in a second. I can assign a point value. So this assignment, I want to be out of 100 points. I could also attach or create a rubric. I can assign this assignment to multiple classes or just this one class through this particular Microsoft team. Or I can assign to all students or assign to specific students if I wanted to. In this case, I want to assign it to all students. But that does allow me for that differentiation that we sometimes need because different students are working on different skill sets, etc. So I mentioned I'd get back to adding resources. This is a very important feature of the assignments tab. When I click that, it allows me to attach a file I've already created, or I could create a new file. So I could pull a file from OneDrive, from the notebook, or I could just create a new file, which is what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to attach a Word document. So I'll call this the invasive species expository essay. So just to clarify what I'm doing right now, the assignment is called invasive species expository essay. Students need a place to actually write the essay. So I'm going to populate this assignment with a Word document. So basically, I'm going to tell my students to fill out this document with their essay. So I'll attach this assignment. Now, by default, you'll see that students cannot edit this. That's a great feature for if it's a resource, right? Read this text and then respond to it somewhere else, right? That would be perfectly, that would work well with this feature, students can't edit. In this case, I do want students to edit because this is where I want them to put their essay. So I'm going to click this ellipsis right here, and I'm going to change it to students edit their own copy. So what that does is it's like the digital equivalent of having a paper and making multiple photocopies of it. So if I have 20 students, I made 20 copies, and I handed out a different carbon copy of the same sheet to each student. So once I assign this, all students are going to have this document. All right, I'm just going to click in it really quickly. I could even adjust it if I need to. Right now, I'm not going to for purposes of time. But if I wanted to like put name, date, period here, I would be able to by editing it. And then it would have all of that text when students open it. Okay, but right now it's a blank document. So now that it's attached, I have a due date, I have who I'm assigning it to. I'm going to actually press assign now. So now this assignment is assigned. So all students are going to see this when they go to their assignments tab. They'll be able to see that this assignment was assigned. Notice they're also going to get the notification in the general post tab, right? So this is, like I said before, this is a place for announcements and updates and notifications. So students will say, oh, I have invasive species expository essay. Let me check it out in the assignments, and they click it and they'll see it there. Once I've assigned this work, I can go ahead and start grading and even entering grades by clicking the grades tab. From here, so on this row, I'm going to see all the assignments I've assigned. And then this column, I'm going to see all the students in my class. So I want to grade Erin's essay.
I'm submitting.
Oh, excellent.
Give
Thank
me
you.
1 second.
I can't wait to read it. Okay, so I'm just going to hover over this cell because this cell is Erin's invasive species essay. So I'm going to click this ellipsis right here, the more options, and I'm going to open student work. Here I can see the work that the student submitted. I can provide feedback. This is great work. Probably have more sophisticated feedback than that, but you get my drift. I can add I couldn't grade her here, but I want to show you where else I could grade her. So once I add that feedback, I'm just going to click close. From this grades tab, I could just click right here and give her the grade. Press enter. So now Erin's work is graded. But what Teams tries to do is replicate a real-world brick-and-mortar classroom experience. So because Erin submitted this assignment, it's now essentially in my possession as her teacher. So she can't access the document and edit it now that I have it, where I'm leaving comments and I'm grading. So it's kind of like the equivalent of a student handing something into a teacher. They can't edit it when a teacher has it. So if I want Erin to engage in the iterative process, I want her to use my feedback and revise her essay, I can click this ellipsis and I could click return. So now Erin has that edit access again, and she can revise and resubmit, or whatever my expectations that I set for her, she could do. Okay, so let's review what we covered. We learned to create a Microsoft team and add students and teachers. We learned to use Teams as a platform for communication. And we learned to assign and grade work. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, I want to leave the last 10 minutes open for question and answer. I noticed that some people already submitted questions and Erin had answers for you. If you have any other questions, now's the time to submit. So go ahead and take the last 10 minutes, submit any questions you have.
Al, can you go back to Teams? There was a question about how to tell which kind of team you've created. There's
Sure.
kind of a hack for that. So if it's a class team, the best way to tell is by looking at the tabs. If it's a class team, there's going to be a class notebook. If it's a staff team, there's going to be a staff notebook. Al, do you have any PLCs?
I don't think so, or maybe, yeah.
Or we could just make a new one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because the question originated from, can you change the type of team after you've created it? And you can't. And so there's no way unless you include that in the name of the team. And that might be a way to go about this without having to go in each team to see. That's fine, Al, go ahead.
Okay.
You could put it in the description. You could put it in the team name. And then once this is done.
Oh. Let me just make it public for now.
Yeah.
Just so you folks know, different teams have different settings, right? So because I'm creating a PLC, I can make this team public or private. What that means is if it's public, then anyone within my tenant, so like basically my school district or however my tenant is set up, will see the team and be able to join if they want. If I make it private, then I would have to add people in order for them to join. So I'm going to make this public.
And then after this, we can show you one other trick. So in the tabs, notice there's a PLC notebook. The other team has no notebook at all. So that's one quick way. Al, will you go back to the team's main page? And then in the upper right, click the gear. Yep. And choose Manage Teams. And so if you put the kind of team that it is in the description, that would also be another way, but you'd have to remember to actually label that when you're creating the team. So there's no automatic way within Teams to be able to tell, but you can either click in each team and see what kind of notebook is there, or make it your practice when you're creating your team to put the type of team in the description, and then people can go back and see it that way. Are there any file size limits? No. In the background, this is all being saved, and it's all through SharePoint. So we don't really talk about SharePoint that much because you don't really need it for this setup part, but whatever I forget what the saving limits are for SharePoint, but I think it's a lot. Like, I want to say a terabyte, but don't quote me on that for sure. But the only time I've ever heard of people running out of space is if they're heavy video users. And even that is stretching it. So I can direct you, but check with your IT and see what kind of restrictions there are there. When I tried to upload a specific page from a math file for an assignment from OneDrive, it uploaded the entire workbook, including the answers. Peggy, when you say entire workbook, do you mean entire notebook? I guess I'm not sure. So I'm going to move to Shelley's question and then come back to you, Peggy. Shelley, one of the cool features in OneNote, which we don't have time to show you, but I'll tell you what to look for. In Class Notebook, there's something called Math Help. And if you, you can actually, with your finger or a stylus and on the touchscreen, you can write out the equations, and then there's a math lasso, however you want to say that. And so if the students have written out their process, you can use that math lasso and draw a circle around it, and it actually replays the steps for you that the student completed. And you could have a meeting just like we're having. You could start that meet now that Al showed you. You could go to either PowerPoint or OneNote, excuse me, and actually share your screen with the meeting and also work through those steps so that you can demonstrate that. I'll also tell you there's a Microsoft app called Whiteboard that you might want to look into, but within Teams, you can do that on the OneNote pages, or you can open PowerPoint and use the drawing toolbar within there. Peggy, my workbook.
I'm assuming that Peggy is referring to a PDF. So if you have a PDF, which is almost like an image of text, what you would need in order to not upload it into its entirety is some kind of PDF editor. You could probably find a third-party resource online that can edit PDFs, like delete pages and that sort of thing. So you could save like the original copy and then a second copy without the answers, for example, and then upload that second version.
You could also take a screenshot of the page that you want and drop that on a notebook page, or drop that into, there was somebody who on one of our other sessions said, take a screenshot so you have like a JPEG or a PNG, and then insert that as a background image. So you could do that in PowerPoint. Pretty sure you can do it in Word. I'd want to test that. And then it becomes, the workbook page becomes the flattened image so that students can then solve and write depending on the kind of tablet they have.
Yep. And for those of you who don't know how to screen clip, I just put in the chat, if you're using a Windows computer, Windows plus Shift plus S will allow you to screenshot or screen clip.
And on an Apple, it's Shift Command 4. And if you hold, that'll drop that image automatically on your desktop. If you hold down Control when you do that, it copies it to the clipboard and you can paste it into wherever you're working.
Perfect.
Peggy, did we answer your question?
Oh, so I put it in the chat, but to screenshot in Windows, it's Windows Shift S. There's a little Windows button on your keyboard. You press that with Shift and S, and I put that in the chat.
There's also a Windows 10 app that's called Snip and Sketch that you can open, and then you can take screenshots from there. The difference is you could take a bunch of screenshots and rename them and save them. If you just do that keyboard shortcut, it just saves the last thing that you snipped to your clipboard, and then you have to paste it somewhere immediately. So I'll put that in the chat box, snip and Sketch is the name of the app. If you start typing Snip in the search bar in the bottom left of your desktop or your Windows, that should show up. And then Whiteboard is the other one. And you have to download Whiteboard if you don't have it already. The cool thing about Whiteboard is you can share it with people, and it's a community virtual whiteboard. So have fun with that. One other thing, best practice. If you want to set up a practice team and invite some of your colleagues as students to practice to see what posts look like, you could also create a channel in your team that's private to yourself and maybe a couple of other teachers. And then you can practice posting. I know some teachers use that to record video for like flipped video because Teams integrates with Stream. These are all outside of the scope of this webinar. But if you set up a practice team or a practice channel, then you can practice and it's not interrupting the flow, or you don't run the risk of sharing information that you're not quite ready to share yet.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I do want to mention a couple of other items. We want to let you know that we are here for you. We know that you're going through a lot right now. If you have any questions at all, please do reach out at info@eduscape.com. We also do have future events and webinars coming up, and a lot of our webinars that are coming up are free. So if you want to see more, head to eduscape.com/events. We also have a digital learning network, which is a Facebook group. So this is completely free to join. If you are interested to join a group of people who are like-minded folks like you and us, people who work in this profession who just have questions or want to seek or provide inspiration, how do I do this in Teams, or what's the best way to integrate SEL or anything like that, this is supposed to be a place to air out those questions, or seek inspiration, share your ideas, have a sounding board for your professional world. Please do consider joining our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/eduscape.educator.community. Erin, are you putting that in the chat by any chance?
Already done.
Awesome, thank you. And then the last thing, which is also possibly very helpful for many districts right now, we have a remote schoolworks program. Now, essentially what this is it helps entire districts transition to online learning. So if you're an administrator, or if you feel like your administration or your district could benefit from this, take a look at eduscape.com/remote schoolworks, and you can learn more about this program that can help your district from starting at an administrative level, what decisions can be made to help teachers, down to next to teachers, helping teachers integrate effective pedagogy into their digital classrooms, all the way down to possibly even students, how they can transition into remote learning. If that's something that might help your school, then this might be the right thing for you to consider. You could go to eduscape.com/remote schoolworks, or you could email us if you have any questions at all about it at info@eduscape.com. Now, when we end this webinar, you will probably receive a prompt to complete a survey. If not, you will also get a follow-up email with that survey. We encourage you to fill out the survey because, one, it helps us out a lot, but also there's a question there for you to receive a professional development certificate from us. So if that's something you're interested in getting, then please do be sure to complete the survey. Erin, is there anything that I missed?
Oh, can you go back to Teams one more thing? I just want to make sure we were clear about this. In Teams, in the Files tab, there's a folder that's automatically there, called Class Materials. And that is the equivalent of what Al was saying in OneNote of teacher-only access. So teachers can put files in Class Materials and they can be accessed, but they can't be deleted. And if somebody by accident deletes a file, you can work with the people at your school to get to the SharePoint site, and that would be in the recycle bin, so you can you can put it back. So it's gone from the view in Teams, but it's not deleted. And so you can work with your staff at school to get that back in the team.
Right, great point, Erin. And that concludes our webinar.
You're actually, I'm just noticing you're highlighting open in SharePoint. So.
Oh, that was a coincidence. I'm hovering over my toolbar. Okay, so it's been a pleasure. I hope you learned something today. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach us either at eduscape.com or email us at info@eduscape.com.
Bye,
and
everyone.
Good luck.
Have
Take
a
care.
great weekend. Take a breath. You're doing a great job.